Hi, I'm Devin. I'm the treasurer of CASA.
Hi, I'm Amani, and I'm the secretary of CASA.
This month we have covered the topics from understanding on natural bias to confronting the reality of systematic racism. The entire CASA board is extremely thankful for the teachers and students that have accepted and been fully represented to the courageous conversations. For Black History Month, the entire board was dedicated to educating the uniform and supporting those who already saw the value within understanding and speaking out against racial injustice. But this is only the beginning. We hope that everyone continues to speak out, to educate their peers, and seek out the opportunities to support underrepresented communities.
With that being said, welcome to the final week's video for Black History Month. Today we want to talk about reverse racism, and close out our series with the understanding of what it means to be an anti-racist. Merriam Dictionary defines reverse racism as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a dominant or privileged racial or ethnic group.
Before we go any further, we must emphasize that reverse racism is a myth. Here's why. First, to clarify what reverse racism means, one must understand that it implies that a class of people from the dominant racial group has been negatively impacted or discriminated against. In favor of a racial or ethnic minority group, it's an idea that a racial or ethnic minority group can somehow cause a negative outcome for the majority group through political, economic, and institutional means.
For reverse racism to exist, another group has to be able to enforce its power and privilege over another race. We have already learned that due to historical racism, and structural racism in particular, racial and ethnic minorities do not have power nor privilege. Therefore, it is impossible for there to be reverse racism. The idea of reverse racism represents a false ideology that is used to diminish the painful realities of many African Americans. When you or a peer support the existence or claim to be a victim of reverse racism, you support a very degrading and hurtful narrative. It is essentially blaming a marginalized group for a poor outcome over which they have no control or responsibility. Racism is not the same thing as prejudice, bigotry, or discrimination, which we discussed in week 2. It is undeniable that prejudice, discrimination, and bigotry are unacceptable, no matter who is the victim or enacting it.
While white people may experience individual acts of racism, the notion of the whole group being systematically oppressed or excluded from something is just not possible since they have the power. It is important to note that racism is a much more complex issue of an unbalanced power dynamic between a racial or ethnic group that is systematically and historically lowers an opposing group's quality of life.
While the focus of racism is primarily seen as a black versus white issue, this is not the case. Anyone, no matter their racial or ethnic background, can be racist. The definition of anti-racism is a policy or practice of opposing racism and promoting racial equality. Some examples of anti-racism are participating in these conversations about racial inequality, attending protests, as well as schools and places of employment, creating programs that focus on racial and ethnic training.
Last week we shared a video of a woman who racially profiled an African American teen, accusing him of stealing her cell phone that was later returned by her Uber driver. In the video, the woman attempts to justify that she's not racist.
Do you believe that you should pay a price for this?
I don't feel that my accusation is a crime.
But it's more than the accusation. It's the way that you tackled him, it seems, on the videotape. What would you do differently? You said that you look at that tape and that's not who you are.
I think I could have just asked the hotel manager. So yes, I could have stepped aside, or the father and I. We immediately could have started just speaking at a lower tone, and probably that would have handled the whole situation a lot better.
Some actions that she could have taken could have been holding herself accountable to losing her cell phone, acknowledging the situations, and acknowledging how her actions caused the boy emotional distress and put the boy in danger. Take a moment to reflect on the realities of many African Americans and other people of color. Consider how you can be part of the solution to combat racism using anti-racism approaches.
We hope the discussion questions allow everyone to have an honest and respectful conversation with the intent to become more educated and aware. Thank you, and happy Black History Month.